So what does it mean for a game to be high quality or low quality, good or bad, or worth engaging versus not really worth playing at all? Last week on X, I came across this chart here and was shared and had the simple question, which would you rather play? The snooty video game critic in me, of course, gravitated towards B. I mean, gameplay is, of course, must be the central focus of game design. And I believe the gameplay criteria should be weighted much higher than the other criteria of music, visuals, or story. That being said, there were a lot of people that, of course, chose game A. And this really got me thinking. What does it mean for a game to be good? At what point does a low score in any of those categories turn people away from the game? If a low score in music happens, but it's got good visual, story, and gameplay, that's probably not going to turn people away. I think when I think of a game like that, I think of Metroid Dread. Metroid Dread has incredible gameplay, incredible visuals, and a great story for a Metroidvania. But the music really isn't that memorable. I think it's one of the best games on the Switch, and I think everyone should play it, especially if you're a fan of Metroidvanias. But I wouldn't give it a high score in the music department. But I'd still give it like a 9 out of 10 score overall. A game that has great gameplay with a poor story. Okay, I think of Resident Evil 8. Resident Evil 8, great gameplay. Very reminiscent of Resident Evil 4. If you love Resident Evil 4, you're going to love Resident Evil 8. The visuals are fantastic. The music, not really memorable. The story is but is that enough to tank the game? No. Resident Evil 8 was a big hit. Even if you didn't really like that it was a departure from mainlining Resident Evil, or you hated Ethan as a protagonist, I would say that game was a success. Low visuals. What does that mean? I think that the low visuals, if you're an older gamer like myself and you're used to growing up in the 16-bit era or the N64 PS1 era with really blocky 3D models, you tend to be a bit more forgiving when it comes to visuals in games, unless the game can't really overcome the uncanny valley with its character models. That kind of off-putting feeling you get when you see a character model that doesn't look quite right. I think this one depends a lot on the technology and what we expect from a game. Like Octopath Traveler and these HD 2D remakes look fantastic, even though you're just looking at pixels. So that one, it depends on what you expect and what you want out of a game. I see people online arguing about, if a game doesn't run at 60 FPS, that is unforgivable. Some people that matters. Some people it doesn't really matter as much. So with those examples in mind, that's really why I weigh gameplay heavier than all these other scores. If you're going to have a game with 5 out of 10 gameplay, you absolutely need 10 out of 10 visuals and a 10 out of 10 story. Music, I think you can skirt by with, but you really need something to distract the audience or the gamers from that low gameplay. When I think of a game like that, I would say Octopath Traveler is a game A. Sorry if people disagree with me, but the gameplay in that game really wasn't anything new. It's the same basic formula for RPGs that's been around since Sega Genesis and Super Nintendo. Even before that, in the Breath of Fire series, these older RPG games. You hit a button, you attack. That's pretty much it. Does not even the Mario RPG series is a bit more of an interactive interaction with its turn-based combat. The gameplay, it really didn't do it for me, but it had great music and it looked fantastic. And I understand a lot of people like the story. For me, it didn't really do it, but I'm still gonna say it had a 10 out of 10 story just by trusting what people like. I was turned off by the game. I put 10 hours into that game and I just couldn't do it anymore. It was not engaging enough for me. I'm on a much wider scale, and this is where I really wish I had more reach as a guy on social media. I'd really like to see more examples of people that can put out like what would be an example of a game A versus a game B. I've played a lot of games in my day, but I'm only one man. I can't play everything, so I'd love to hear what other people think. A game with tens across the board I think, is a extreme rarity. Games that get close, I would say Witcher 3 definitely gets close. Metroid Dread definitely gets close. Mega Man X definitely gets close, playing in the background right now. But I'd love to hear what other people think. What are the games that come close to that perfect 10 out of 10? What are games that have great gameplay and low music visuals and a story? And what are games that have low gameplay but are extremely great to look at, to listen to, and have a great story? I do understand that some of these categories and how people value them are subjective. And I do think that is true to a certain extent. But there's a reason why some games become iconic in our gaming culture and some games don't. There are games that are great that don't match that level of iconicness, if I think that's even a word, that we just forget about. And there are games that stand the test of time. And I do think it's because for its time, it had that 10 out of 10 for every single one of these. Ocarina of Time, I think, for its time, it reached that 10 out of 10 for many different review boards. And it's reached that iconic status. And so gameplay, while it is heavily weighted against these other criteria, it's not enough to push your game into that iconic status. So you really do need to figure out a way, if you're a game developer, to what do people find attractive in for visuals or for your music or for your story, to kind of push your game past just having fantastic gameplay. Anyway, thanks for listening to this rant. I know I probably had some incomplete thoughts, but let me know what you think. What would you choose, game A or game B? What are some examples of game A or game B? What are some examples of games that have ones across the board versus games that have tens across the board? Do you think that it's possible for a game to be fun and engaging but not be a quality game? And on a more existential note, do you think that's good for society, for players to play games that are really not worth our time? Anyway, love to hear your thoughts. Thanks for listening.